Oh, hey there. How you doing? It's the Deeper Dive. Dave Lochran and Adam Shaw bringing you a monster 14-game slate. 4 days to go out of 4 days left in the week till Friday of baseball. How you feeling?
Pretty good. Getting excited about preseason NBA, which says a lot about how baseball's been going.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster ride, that's for sure. We only have an hour here. We're gonna hand it over to the live before lock show around 6 o'clock. So let's just dive right into it. We'll go game by game. Excuse me. I just ate a cheeseburger with a fried egg on top of it with some Russian dressing, and it's doing some work on the heartburn. So bear with me. I'll bear with you. Miami and Washington, Max Scherzer and Jeff Brigham. Hey, can we just give a slow golf clap to Steven Strasburg from yesterday? Phenomenal performance. He only threw 4,800 pitches in the first inning.
Yeah. So there is one positive we can take from that, though, and it has nothing to do with Strasburg, but they let him throw 100 pitches yesterday, despite being absolute trash and only going 4 innings. So I feel good about Scherzer, like not being on a pitch count whatsoever here.
Yeah, if Strasburg's throwing 100 in late September, Scherzer probably is limited around like 250.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I don't want to hear anything about the Nats aren't making the playoffs. Scherzer is going to be limited or any of the stupid stuff people were saying about Kluber yesterday.
yeah,
Yeah. That was my one takeaway from Strasburg that didn't, piss me off.
pretty much. Yeah, I ended up with not that much Strasburg. I think I had like 3 of 10. I nailed all of my pitching outside of him. It's just the hitters.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Hitters
think you and
didn't
I,
want to cooperate.
we talked about that yesterday. We both ended up with a lot more Kluber than Strasburg, which was nice, but didn't really make a whole lot of a difference.
Nope, certainly didn't. Anyway, what are your thoughts on Scherzer against Miami? He's obviously the most expensive on the slate, but for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a really good spot against Miami. They're running six righties out there plus the pitcher spot. Scherzer's not overly expensive. I mean, we've seen him be much more expensive than he is today. I think he's clearly the top pitcher in cash games. I wouldn't play cash games without him today, especially with David Price's game getting rained out. I don't really see anywhere else that you can go as your SP1 in cash. The issue for me in tournaments, or it's not even an issue, it's just that I think you can get away from him. I mean, there are so many expensive bats in good spots on this slate. There are some good value bats that I really like, but there's not a ton of them. There's just a few that like I love, but it's baseball and it's pretty easy for, 3 or 4 hitters to really bust. And then you're in a good spot if you get away from him. So not a must for me in tournaments, though I really like him if you can get there. But for cash games, I don't see how you get away from him.
Yeah, and I mean, it should come as no surprise to anyone that when you're talking about opponent run totals, the Miami's at 2.5. It's the lowest on the slate by almost a full run. Scherzer is a 379 money line favorite. So obviously top pitching option. It's just how confident or comfortable do you feel when he's in your lineup along with other hitters? Jeff Brigham on the other side, coming off of a respectable game. Not nothing crazy, but 5 innings, 6 strikeouts, 2 runs. He walked 4 batters. He's walked 9 batters in 12 innings so far. What are your thoughts on the Washington bats here? Because Brigham, you're not paying 6,200, even if you wanted a punt. He's not really a punt anymore.
Right. Washington's a team that if you are full stacking today, I think definitely deserves consideration. Brigham is okay. He's nothing special, and it's a bad Miami bullpen behind him. Obviously, a lot of upside here for the Nats. They are expensive, though, and it just becomes hard, I think, to prioritize a lot of them when you have, Harper and Soto taking up 2 outfield spots with a lot of really good outfield plays on this slate. Trey Turner being 5,400 is kind of tough when you have Machado at basically the same price point on DraftKings. You have Trevor Story's cheaper, Lindor's cheaper. It basically, as far as one-offs go, the guys that I really like, I do like Harper. But again, it's a really deep position. I love Anthony Rendon in tournaments. I think that third base is a pretty deep position. You're going to see a lot of ownership go to, Jose Ramirez, where he's third base eligible. Obviously, Nolan Arenado, maybe some Justin Turner. But Anthony Rendon, I think, maybe goes a little bit overlooked. And I just love the way he matches up with Brigham here. Brigham's basically a fastball, curveball guy. Against righties this year, he's thrown about 45% fastballs, about 37% curveballs. And Rendon this season against fastballs in Brigham's velocity range and against right-handed curveballs has just put up absolutely phenomenal numbers against them. So I think that he's a guy that makes for an outstanding one-off in tournaments just because his ownership will be driven down by the guys priced around him. Harper matches up well too. And then Ryan Zimmerman at first base. He's only 4,200 on DraftKings. He's been hitting the ball really hard pretty much all season when he's been healthy. And while there are a lot of options at first base that I think are good plays, there's not really that many that I think are, just absolute. I don't feel good if they're not in my lineup type plays. And so the reasonable price tag on Zimmerman, I think, is pretty appealing.
Yeah, I think this Washington team just gives you a decent amount of upside. And with, I said 14 games earlier, but with the postponement, we only have 13 games. Should go. They're not going to go overlooked because they have one of the highest run totals on the slate. They're at 5.1 here, so they're going to get some attention, but I don't see them being extremely popular either. Also, talking about humidity, you have a lot. It's very, very humid in Washington, about 90% humidity. It's only going to climb throughout the night, so that doesn't hurt either. Houston and Toronto, Adam, Josh James, 8,100 on DraftKings. Yeah, 8,100. Quite a price tag on a guy that was minimum salary last night, literally $4,000. And Sam Gaviglio coming off a pretty disappointing outing against Tampa Bay. Actually, he hasn't been good now since August. Look, Gaviglio has never really been an upside guy. He's got a decent slider. He gets a decent amount of ground balls, but you're not placing much faith in him against Houston unless, I don't know, maybe you are paying 4,500 for him.
No, I can't really get there. I mean, even over the last, month plus, he hasn't put up the same kind of numbers against righties. And he's not someone that projected to actually be as good as he was earlier this year. So as soon as the other, shoe starts to drop, then I'm getting off pretty quickly because there's no reason to really think he was as good as he had been. And this is obviously just a really tough matchup with Houston. The fact that he's gotten so many ground balls from righties is enough for me to downgrade the Houston right-handed bats a bit, especially on a slate with as much hitting as we have. But I think Marwin Gonzalez is my favorite value shortstop play. He opens up a lot for you at only 3,800, batting fourth on DraftKings, shortstop and outfield eligible. I like him quite a bit from the left side. Has a 199 ISO against right-handed pitching since the start of last year. So it's not like you're sacrificing a ton of upside there. I like him quite a bit. I don't mind, the Houston bats either. They're all pretty inexpensive. Everyone in the lineup's below 5K on DraftKings, but Gonzalez is the only guy that I'm really prioritizing.
Gaviglio's whiff rate against righties on his slider per month, not whiffs per swing, but whiff rate per month. 23% in May, 24% in June, 17% in July, 24% in August, 6% in September. So he's legitimately getting nothing on that slider. And that was the one pitch that gave him, even a remote amount of upside to where you could stomach rostering him at a cheap price.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not wrong though. Like, targeting opposing hitters, obviously, I like some Houston bats here, but I guess I'll put it to you this way in simple terms. I like Houston a whole lot more against Estrada than I do against Gaviglio.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at as well.
Do you have anything else on this game?
No. Well, so Josh James on FanDuel is only 6,500. I think that is a really appealing price point because there are so many bats to pay for on the slate. We know the guy has upside. So I think that price point's appealing. 8,100 on DraftKings is pretty steep. It is a pretty bad range of pitchers though. So I can see having, some of him if you're going with like two mid-range pitchers instead of stars and scrubs. But where I would really like to roster James would be on FanDuel.
Yeah. You feel all right doing that? One pitcher site roster and Josh James?
The upside's there. He's not going to consistently have these monster games, but there's no question that he has upside against a pretty bad Toronto lineup. I mean, the guy's got, like a 32% strikeout rate at AAA this year, 35% since coming up to the majors.
Yeah, he has ridiculous strikeout stuff. There's no
he throws like
101,
102 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's filthy. He's got filthy stuff. Swinging strike rate above 13%. He has really good stuff. Yeah. I don't hate it. I'm not paying 81 for him on DraftKings, though. I certainly can't do that. No Boston and Baltimore, so we have Tampa Bay and the Yankees. We've got Severino, who was originally slated to start yesterday's game. Then it was Sonny Gray. And then who was it? Who ended up pitching? I don't even remember who started.
Jonathan Holder,
yeah. So you have Severino today. Holder went, I think, 1 inning yesterday. Yeah, 1 inning. Walked 2, struck out 1. And then opposite Severino, we've got ourselves Jake Faria. He is. I'm assuming. So okay. Here's the thing. How long do we expect him to go here? Because I'm seeing reports that it was originally supposed to be a bullpen game, but now we could possibly get more out of Foria. I'm not saying you play him. You simply can't trust a guy who likely won't go more than 4 innings anyway. But have you seen anything regarding what we're looking at with Faria tonight?
No, I mean I'm expecting like 4 or 5 innings just based on how much he's pitched recently.
Right.
Not completely stretched out. There's no reason for them to, run any run any sort of risk with a young pitcher like him. So I'm expecting 4 or 5 innings.
Pretty disappointing season too. I mean, the kid's flashed some upside. I think he's still going to be a fine pitcher, like a middle of the rotation guy. But he's been pretty disappointing anyway. So yeah, I don't really see any need to discuss it. But just in terms of getting an idea of who's going to be coming in to relieve him here, we're not expecting a full bullpen game. What are your thoughts on Severino against Tampa?
Do you have ownership in front of you? Because that makes a big difference to me, and I haven't pulled it up yet.
Let me.
But
I'll refresh it while you talk. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, Severino obviously has upside. It's a good park. It's a nice matchup against Tampa Bay, and he to me is like the logical pivot away from Scherzer if you're looking to get an ace pitcher in your lineup, but save some money. Like on FanDuel, he's only $1,100. On DraftKings, he's 11,100. So it's him and Bueller that you can look to as pivots, but he's the cheapest out of the two. My concern is if he's going to be similarly owned to Scherzer, I don't feel quite as confident in Severino going deep into the game as I do with Scherzer. We already talked about we're not concerned at all about Scherzer's pitch count here, but the Yankees have been, had relatively short leashes on their starting pitchers all season long because of how good their bullpen is, and then now they're not playing for anything either. So it wouldn't surprise. I'd be much less surprised if we saw Severino pulled after 6 innings, regardless of pitch count, than I would be if Scherzer, comes out and is pulled early. So that concerns me a little bit. But if we are going to get a significant ownership difference, then I'm willing to kind of ignore that in lineups where, a $1,700 difference on DraftKings gets me an extra bat or two.
No, I definitely agree with that. Plus, Severino's pitched into the seventh or pitched 7 innings like twice in the past 6 years anyway. I mean, he has struggled to get deep into games recently. I know his last start was solid, very solid, and that came against Boston. But aside for that, he has labored. Even in his better starts, his pitch counts have run up there. So right now, I'm showing him these ownership projections can be found on awesemo.com, by the way, for each slate individually. DraftKings showing Scherzer 39 and Severino at 11.
That's worth it to me if that's right.
On FanDuel, however, both are at 19% right now.
Yeah, so I haven't built FanDuel lineups, but I know normally their pricing over there is pretty soft. So I think I would just get as much Scherzer as I can. And I'd probably even actually go to Walker Buehler at the same price because I think Buehler's 10,100. But on DraftKings, where Severino is the cheapest out of the three, if those ownership percentages hold true, then I kind of like the idea of getting to Severino because it does get you an extra bat or two.
Dude, Buehler is just a flat out stud. I was gushing about him to you the other day because his stuff is just ridiculous and it's only getting better. We'll get to him later on, but I mean, he's got his fastball has a comparable whiff per swing rate to like Jacob deGrom, and you very seldom see numbers like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember when he first came up, he was, and we'll talk about it later, obviously, but I don't remember. It was some really good hitter he faced. Basically, said that it reminded him of Verlander.
Is that right?
I don't remember who it was.
You and I both mentioned when he first came up that we expected the strikeouts, the swinging strikes to decline, but he's actually made improvements, and he's only gotten better. So yeah, Walker, really, really good. Walker Buehler was a guy actually that I think it was last week. I played him over. It was someone else. I think it was Carrasco, and I'm like, all right, well, my night's done. Carrasco went off. I think Carrasco had 32, and Buehler was the 10 p.m. start. So I'm like, all right, well, close the laptop. He ended up putting up 34 and a half. So
after loading the bases in the first inning too.
Yeah. Oh, that was rough, and both of those runs were unearned too.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like he's not going to get through 5. He's through 30. He threw like 35 pitches or something. Like it's a wrap. But 12 strikeouts. The kid's nasty. So look forward to talking about him. But before we do, anything else on this New York Yankee Tampa Bay game?
No.
All right. Let's keep it moving then. Mets in Atlanta. We've got Noah Syndergaard, and here he is. Took it to Toussaint. Oh, what a name. I remember when he first came up, this was the game that Josh and I were talking about on the first process show we did. And we're like, you know what? Stack Boston because Toussaint, yeah, he profiles to be a decent pitcher, but their ownership was showing at like 1 to 3% everywhere. And everyone, including Josh and me, are like, "Oh, this was a bad decision." He got 4 hitless innings. He had a no-hitter into the 4th. Then he gave up 3, and then they beat up the bullpen, scored 8 runs. But that's Touki Toussaint was the guy on the first process show.
I remember that because I faded the Red Sox and was looking really good in tournaments until all the dumbasses that listened to you and Josh passed.
Oh, you gotta love it. Anyway, I know where you stand, and I stand with you on this. When Noah Syndergaard is priced above 10K or even above 9,500 for that matter, he is a very difficult pitcher to roster. I don't need you pointing to his 45 fantasy point game against San Francisco, because if you do, I'm just going to point to every other start he's had this season.
Yeah, I mean, and I just think it's a tough matchup here too. It's kind of an appealing slate. Like I wish I liked Syndergaard here because there is just such limited pitching, but I just can't bring myself to do it against an Atlanta team that's so difficult to strike out, puts the ball in play, has speed. I mean, you have at least 10 stolen bases from 5 different guys in this lineup with Acuna, Inciarte, Freeman, Swanson, and Ozzie Albies. And so that's a bunch of guys that if they get on base, they're at second or they're at third against Syndergaard. So the slate's too deep for me to prioritize anyone from Atlanta. You know, if I'm playing 150 lineups, I don't mind having, 5% or whatever and being above the field on guys like Inciarte, but I can't prioritize him just because of how deep the slate is. But I'm not going to Syndergaard either, just because Atlanta's a pretty tough matchup for him, I think. On the other side, though, Toussaint, I think, is interesting because he has good strikeout stuff. I mean, he struggles with his control. He's a young guy, so he's going to be inconsistent most likely. But the mid range is just kind of dead on this slate. And if you are trying to get a different roster construction instead of going Scherzer plus Robbie Erlin and go with 2 mid range guys, I think Toussaint's one of the higher upside guys here. It's not a bad matchup against the Mets. There's no reason to expect real extreme splits from Toussaint because he does have several plus pitches. He has a good splitter or changeup, whatever you want to call it, that can neutralize lefties. So I do think it's a good matchup for him. I have him, I have him probably as my favorite mid-range starting pitcher on DraftKings.
I like him quite a bit as well. I mean, it's obviously a risky play and more so just leverage than anything else, but it makes perfect sense. You're talking about a bad Mets team, a Mets team that really doesn't scare you that much, and a Mets team that in most categories is going to be towards the bottom of the league. You look at their active roster against right-handed pitching, they are pretty much bottom 10. Woba, 22nd. ISO, I think their ISO's okay. They got a little bit of pop. They're 19th. And then their K rate's like 12th. So, I mean, it's not the best matchup, but it's not a terrible one either. And you've got a few bats in this lineup that are going to strike out at a pretty high clip. So I'm with you there. Obviously, just an off base tournament option that I don't expect to be that owned at all. I mean, I would say around 5% probably, even on two pitcher sites.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, in hand making my lineups tonight, every lineup I make where I try and take that roster construction with like a Toussaint or a Shoemaker or whoever, I end up just finding lineups I like better if I either double punt pitcher or go stars and scrubs at pitcher. So it's certainly not someone I'm prioritizing, but if that's a build that you were trying to get to, I think it's one of the better plays.
And he did throw 93 pitches last time out. So
he's thrown 105 in a different start too.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't reference that because he threw 25 in the one after that.
I think it was a bullpen appearance.
It was. But yeah. I'm saying that he threw 93 after only throwing 25, which was like 4 days later. So I'm on board with that. So from a hitting standpoint, though, I don't. The thing about Syndergaard is that he's just so dreadfully bad at holding runners that if he does happen to be off and things go south, it's a guarantee that he's giving up stolen bases. I mean, he's allowed 32 stolen bases. The next worst pitcher's allowed 25. That's Giolito, and then 24 for Matz. But 20 or 32 stolen bases, which is incredible when you look at total bases allowed, is way lower than guys like Giolito and Matz and Hamels and all of those guys that are up there. And he was even on the DL for a little while too. He's still all the way up there. It's just he's easily the worst in the league, and it's not even close when you consider the fact that he does a decent job of limiting base runners, but every base runner runs on him, whether it's Jorge Alfaro or Edwin Encarnacion.
Yeah, and I think that if you're playing a bunch of lineups and just looking for one-offs, I actually think that with second base and shortstop being as weak as they are, at least in terms of value, Ozzie, even though they're hitting 7th and 8th, Albies and Swanson are two guys that I think it's going to be easier to get into your lineups than the actual good hitters at the top. And they're guys that if they do manage to get on, they're going to steal.
So J-Dub just reminded me of something. Thanks. And the DFS goat saying the Braves Mets weather looks dicey. And J-Dub says Mets game not happening. I'm in New York. What I'm seeing in the forecast right now is that by like 11 or 10 o'clock, it's supposed to slow down. So it's definitely risky. Even if they were to delay this game, I don't know. It's definitely a concern right now, Adam, but not postponed yet. Not like Boston.
Yeah.
So we still got to talk about it. But yeah, it's worth throwing out there that pitching in this game to begin with is already very risky. So yeah. Good call, fellas. Thanks.
Morning. So if that's the update, then yeah.
DFS GOAT J-Dub, thanks for bringing that up. Cubs in Pittsburgh, Chris Archer, Mike Montgomery. He did it, Adam. He did it. He finally didn't let us down when he was in a good spot. Chris Archer, for the first time, what feels like all season long, 7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts, 29.6 DraftKings points. He did it, man. He finally did it. I guess the question is, what are the odds of Archer doing it twice in a row?
Yeah, now you've got a tough matchup with the Cubs going into Wrigley. Yeah, priced up going into Wrigley. I don't really have any interest here. The argument would kind of be the same as it would be for Syndergaard, that there's just not a lot of other pitchers in the price range. So I could see how he does end up in some lineups, but it's just not a spot where I'm interested. I'd much rather go to some of these Cubs bats. I think that Daniel Murphy at 4,100 at a weak second base position is nice. He's finally hitting the ball hard again. He's hitting for more power. And we know that Archer, even when he was more consistently good, struggles with left-handed power. So you have Murphy, you have Anthony Rizzo in a pretty nice spot. And then it's just, like a bunch of tough outs with guys like, Baez and Zobrist and Schwarber. It's not a spot where I'm interested in Archer. I'd rather, take some one-offs from the Cubs.
Yeah, I think so too, but I don't really have interest in either. I Archer against lefties is definitely vulnerable, but with the amount of games and good hitting spots we have on the slate, not sure really how much I want to go there. But honestly, he's allowing a 354 WOBA, about a 218 ISO, and 1.69 home runs per 9 to lefties this year. Those are pretty robust numbers when you're considering opposite-handed hitting splits. Those are, and 41% hard contact. For a guy like Archer that's considered a good pitcher, he has not been very good against lefties at all.
Yeah, no, I mean he's gotten blasted, and it's been an issue he's had his whole career. The Cubs have
he's settled down a little bit. 2 years ago, or maybe it was later, he settled down a little bit. The splits weren't as extreme, and they came climbing back into his life this year.
Yeah, and I mean the Cubs have over a 5 implied run total here, and they're pretty attractively priced. And I don't think that they'll be popular at all because Archer does carry name value.
For sure, 6 lefties, including Montgomery, so 5. Murphy, Zobrist, Rizzo, Schwarber, and Hayward. Yeah, and when your righties are Javi Baez and Chris Bryant, it's not going to make life any easier on him either. This is a tough matchup for sure. Looking at, let's see, the pricing on these guys. Yeah, Schwarber's 46, Baez 52. A lot of the lefties, the good ones at least, are pretty expensive. Rizzo at 44, though, that's pretty attractive on DraftKings.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And, like I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of first basemen that I like, but there's no one. There are a couple guys on this slate, especially in the outfield, where when I make a lineup and it doesn't have them, I end up rebuilding my lineup. But first base doesn't have anyone like that. And So I think Rizzo's, one of the better options.
I think I say this about Montgomery every time he's on the mound. I generally don't target him, and I don't target against him because he does not give up a lot of power, and I'm targeting power in most cases. He's not a terrible pitcher, but he doesn't have much strikeout upside, and he's not the type of guy that's generally going to go deep into games for you. What are your thoughts on Montgomery and on this Pittsburgh side?
Yeah, that's my take on Montgomery too. The one exception today would be that I think in cash games on DraftKings where you have to roster a catcher, assuming Francisco Cervelli is hitting cleanup here at only 3,500, I think he makes a lot of sense. Montgomery doesn't really miss bats. Cervelli's basically a league average hitter going back to last season against left-handed pitching. He's really cheap. Catcher's pretty bad. And where you're trying to get Scherzer in, I think that this is one of the spots where going down to him opens up a lot for you.
All right, let's keep going then. We got 7 games to touch on here. Cleveland and the White Sox. Kluber coming off a fantastic start yesterday. 7 scoreless, 11 strikeout innings with the win, 39 fantasy points. He was stellar. Now we've got Trevor Bauer back on the bump. He made his return last week. Well, not last week, earlier this week. Pitched an inning and a half, 2 hits, scoreless, 1 strikeout. He threw 34 pitches. You're seeing the same thing as that went on or was happening with Chris Sale. It's just he's a little bit behind in the progression. So I'm assuming we probably get 3, maybe 4 innings from Bauer tonight.
Yeah, that's my guess. Certainly not enough that we can consider.
No. It's funny. He went on the DL, and we tend to forget things quickly. But there was a stretch there for about 2 months where Bauer was the best DFS option in the league.
Yep. Yeah, he's amazing when healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got 215 strikeouts in 167 innings. It was outrageous. So yeah, you can't play him, not a 10-4 at least. If Bauer was down like super cheap and they said he's going 4 innings, I would consider it.
On this slate, I would play like 8K or 8,500 Bauer, I think, if I was going to get
4 innings. You wouldn't go that high.
He can go for 20 in the spot in 4 or 5 innings.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, dude, if you told me he could get 5 innings,
yeah,
I'd easily pay 8 for him because he could give you 10 strikeouts in this matchup for sure.
We've seen him do it. It feels like a lot of times where it's like, oh, he's being inefficient. My Bauer fade works, and then you look and it's like, oh, he's got 12.
Exactly, dude. He could probably, not even joking, he would. He has 30 fantasy point upside if someone said he'd go 5 innings, 30 fantasy points is possible. Really is. But we're not going to do that, and he's super expensive. James Shields on the other side. I remember, we had a show earlier this year where we had the James Shields conversation. Reminiscing on old times now that the season's almost over, and we convinced you to get on the James Shields train, which is probably the first time I've ever done that to anyone, and the first time any of us really ever considered the guy. But he was showing better stuff at one point. He has been significantly better at home this year, and also a lot better against lefties, like a lot better against lefties. But guess what? The Indians lineup today, Adam, is not the Indians lineup from yesterday. They've got everyone back in the saddle, and I'll pass.
Yeah, I'm not going to Shields here. The Indians obviously are the part that we want to talk about. I think Encarnacion and Donaldson are my 2 favorite plays because they are both reasonably priced, and Shields really, really has struggled with right-handed hitters this year. He's given up a ton of power. He's giving up, a ton of production overall, even over the last month or so since the middle of August. The 3rd highest expected WOBA on the slate for Shields to right-handed hitters. So I like those 2 a lot. Ramirez is really, really interesting to me, and I'm having trouble deciding what to do with him because he's second base eligible now. So on one hand, he's pretty clearly the highest upside guy at the position. But on the other hand, he's been pretty bad at the plate lately. Over the last month, a 301 expected WOBA against right-handed pitching.
Who is this?
Jose Ramirez.
Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure. Yeah, he's fallen in the ranks too. He was up there with JD and Trout. He's still up there, but he was really competing for the title in a bunch of categories, and he slipped.
And in addition to him, just being in a slump right now, I'm a little more concerned about his stolen base upside than I would be, just because I don't factor in, like if guys care about if they need to win the game, like I don't factor in their motivation there. But you're talking about the Indians, having their spot in the playoffs locked up. why is Jose Ramirez going to try and steal a bunch of bases in this game and,
Right.
risk breaking a thumb or whatever? So that does, I think, maybe lower his ceiling a little bit, make me a little less. But I also come back to where if I have the money, he just has such a higher ceiling than, most second basemen. So, I don't mind him, but the guys that I like the most are Encarnacion and Donaldson.
James Shields over his last 10 starts is allowing 2.67 home runs per nine to righties. Not particularly good numbers there. He's allowed multiple home runs in 6 of his last 10 starts. That's not good, in case you were wondering. And it's amazing because he's got an 82% strand rate and a 287 BABIP against righties over that stretch. So he's actually getting lucky and still allowing that much power.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
15% strikeouts too. Yeah. Fire away when it comes to these Cleveland bats today. I mean, like you kind of said with motivation on the base paths, that's one thing, but it's a lot different than basketball where like motivation matters. In baseball, you're not going to go up there and just be like, yeah, I'm going to swing at everything, or I'm just going to keep the bat on my shoulders because I don't feel like doing this today. It doesn't work like that,
Right. I mean, you have the same risk with pretty much all teams, regardless of their
Right.
record, as far as they can pinch hit late in the game because they have 86 guys on the bench. But yeah, I mean, guys going out there to hit, like they're trying to tune up for the playoffs, or they're not. I mean, if they're playing, they're trying to hit.
Exactly. Yeah, and I always hate the like bobblehead narrative, like, or the birthday narrative. It's
I
like
hate every narrative in baseball.
exactly. It's like, oh, that's right. His hand-eye coordination will improve today because it's his bobblehead day. Stop it. At least with basketball, you have like usage. You know what I mean? So motivation matters.
Basketball is the only sport that I actually care about any of those
Yeah.
narratives because we've seen guys just shoot the ball 100 times because they want to.
Exactly. Like Kobe retirement game.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, even in football, it's like, oh, wide receiver revenge game. He still has to get targeted.
Right.
No, you can't.
He still has to get open. The quarterback has to be on board with like, hey, screw the game plan. I'm going to try and help you get revenge.
Right. Exactly. It's but with baseball, it's the worst.
Yeah.
You're either good or you're not. Anyway, let's get back on track here. Detroit and Minnesota. Oh, Spencer Turnbull, what a name. And Gabriel Moya, the lefty for Minnesota. Spencer Turnbull down at 4,300. Moya at 4K flat, Adam. Looking at the expected run totals here, you have Minnesota at an even 5 runs and Detroit at 4.1 here against Gabriel Moya and the bullpen game for Minnesota. Fire away, fella.
I'm interested in pitching in this game. I don't really feel great about it, but in tournaments on DraftKings, so you need the 2 pitchers. Robbie Erlin, I think, is very clearly going to be the chalk SP2. I think he should be the SP2 in cash games. I don't have an issue with him in tournaments if you're contrarian elsewhere. We'll talk about it more. But I think that both Turnbull and Cole Stewart, who will be coming in after Gabriel Moya, at a cheaper price tag and lower ownership makes some sense here because they're not going to get to their ceiling or to a good game as often as Robbie Erlin is, but I think they're going to get there enough to be worth it when you factor in the ownership and the savings. This is a really bad Detroit lineup. They have 5 righties in the lineup, a bunch of guys who just absolutely suck. Cole Stewart is, he has the pedigree. He's a former 4th overall pick who kind of stalled out in the minors, but his stuff looks okay. He in terms of expected WOBA, he's been okay in the majors. He's fully stretched out. He has a 20% strikeout rate against righties. He's $4,600 on DraftKings. It's not crazy to go to him. We've actually seen Detroit's implied run total drop throughout the day as well. And then Turnbull on the other side, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, the Twins have a 5 implied run total, but it's come down from like 5.2 or 5.3 earlier in the day. The temperatures here are in the mid 50s. His stuff looks pretty good. I mean, the guy's got like a 95 mile per hour fastball. He just he doesn't have a track record, obviously. He hasn't looked good in his couple of major league appearances, but he's $4,300 fully stretched out. And you can't tell me that this Twins lineup actually scares you in terms of the talent that they have. At most of Turnbull's innings this year were at Double-A, so we can't really take a whole lot away from it, especially looking at strikeout stuff. But he did have a 12.8% swinging strike rate. He did have a 54.5% ground ball percentage. The ground ball percentage in particular, I think, is appealing when you're talking about him being $4,300. I don't mind using either one of these guys at low ownership in tournaments just to fit in all the bats that I want. And I think pairing one of them with there's a big difference. I think pairing one of them with Scherzer in tournament lineups lets me get like a higher. The example that I'm finding myself in a lot is getting from really cheap Jose Fernandez, who I think is a really good cash play and a much less good tournament play, up to a first baseman who actually has power by going from Erlin down to like a Stewart or a Turnbull.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't buy that you're not scared of Robbie Grossman cleanup though.
He is one of the most frustrating at bats when you have the pitcher against him.
He sure is. It's kind of weird though. You look at a guy in Cole Stewart who in 68 Double-A innings was striking out, 9.5 batters per 9, 23% K rate. And then you move out to Triple-A, and usually you see a slight decline, but it kind of dramatically dropped. And his walk rate, was pretty high. You come into the majors, you throw 30 and 2/3 innings, and you literally have the same walk rate as your strikeout rate, which is concerning. But I have a little bit of interest in Cole Stewart. It's sketchy, there's no doubt, but I don't think it's the craziest thing. He went 6 with no earned runs and 5 strikeouts last time against this same Detroit team, by the way. It's not crazy to think that at 4,600 in tournaments, you get 20 fantasy points and potentially a win from Cole Stewart. Now, when you're playing guys this cheap, Adam, as you know, you're not rostering them with the assumption that they're going to do that. You roster them knowing that they can blow up, but also that if they give you 20 points, like we've gotten from the Mengdens and from the Josh James, then you're in and even the Dylan Coveys and the Brian Mitchells, you're in a really good spot. And this late in the season, I don't think there's any better time to just go ahead and pull the trigger on some sketchy plays that have a relatively decent ceiling for their price point.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about with Erlin. I mean, I think Erlin's the better play in terms of projections, but you can't tell me that Erlin's got a much higher raw point ceiling than Cole Stewart or Turnbull do. I mean, it's an 18% strikeout guy versus a couple of other 18% strikeout guys, and they're all facing bad teams. So, I'll take the discount in money and ownership where it helps me out.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess Cole's Steamer and Zips projections for strikeouts aren't exactly spectacular, but what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they were 6K, I wouldn't be mentioning them.
Right, of course. You get what you pay for. No, listen, I'm not debating.
No,
you.
I'm just trying to elaborate on how I feel about him.
Right. I mean, even Josh James, who has shown immense upside with that strikeout ceiling, even at his price tag on DraftKings, it's like you don't really see the need to go there. The truth is, though, there's been too many cheap pitchers that are paying off, and not all of them are going to pay off. But when they do, you're in such a good spot. And when then you have 13 games, Adam, there are so many good hitting spots as well. It's not like you're pairing Buehler and Scherzer anyway, right? So if you're playing Scherzer or you're playing Buehler or you're playing Severino, and you look at the mid-range guys, as I think you mentioned earlier, it's not that deep, and you have a Coors slate. I'm just much more interested in pairing one of these guys with a dirt cheap pitcher than pairing them with a 6, 7, 8K guy that could just as easily give you 10 or 12 fantasy points. So
yeah, and just like a quick aside on roster construction here, I think there are a couple of good high upside value plays. There's a few, but the one thing that I guess I want to emphasize, or at least the way that I approach tournaments, I try and avoid going to cheap guys who don't have upside on slates like this, because there are so many hitters that are capable of, hitting 2 home runs or, going for 25, 30 fantasy points here, that a good amount of them are going to do it. And I really, really try and avoid wasting a roster spot on a guy that, I'm a hitter that I'm hoping gets me like 10 points. I would rather I'd rather take the savings at pitcher, hope I get, 3 or 4X from them, and then just get as many different really, really good hitters in my lineup.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Also, nice comment here from Ben Fleisner. Pardon the pronunciation, but I think I got it. He said, I'm in Minneapolis. It's 50 degrees and awful great pitching weather. Yeah, it's 50 degrees. It's going to be down to 49 degrees. It is excellent pitching weather there. So just add that to the box of positive. And like, put it this way, of the several pitchers you could consider, or the couple pitchers you could consider in this game, one of them could definitely give you what you need. It's risky, but I'm interested. And so are you. St. Louis and Milwaukee, Gio Gonzalez and Austin Gomber. He came back down to earth against the Dodgers and then picked it right back up again against Atlanta, Adam. This guy he never ceases to surprise us, huh? But anyway, these are two guys that I rarely, if ever, play in fantasy and daily unless they're super cheap. And even when Gio is super cheap, you're clinching your butt cheeks together, hoping that he's efficient enough to get through 4 innings.
Yeah, I don't have interest in either pitcher here. I think that they're both, decent, but I just don't see the need to go to them on this slate. I don't have a ton of interest in bats either. One of the value plays who I do really, really like in any format, but in tournaments, I think, has plenty of upside is Ryan Braun at 3,700 against Gomber. Gomber, I think, is a mediocre pitcher. He's not someone that I love taking hitters against, but he's not someone that I'm really going to shy away from either. And Braun, I think, is just too cheap for a guy who throughout his career has hit phenomenally well against left-handed pitching. He's hit lefties really well again this season. Even over the last month, if you look, he has 18 batted balls in play against lefties, a 99.2 mile an hour average exit velocity, a 499 expected WOBA. His expected WOBA against them for the season is at about 482. I just think he's way too cheap here. So I am prioritizing getting him in my lineups. And then on the other side, if you need savings, and especially at the weaker positions, you have Paul DeJong and Jed Jerko that have plenty of upside, but you do run the risk of this very good Milwaukee bullpen behind Gio.
Yeah. This is tough for me. Even with Gio, like Gio has had homer problems to righties at times, but this year he's settled down a bit. I think like he's allowed 16 home runs overall. How many to righties? It's probably all 16. Let's see. 14-2, which really isn't that much. He's still allowing less than a home run per 9 to righties. He's done a better job there. He just doesn't get any strikeouts against right-handers. And it's a righty heavy lineup as it always is for St. Louis. So yeah, just a game that I'm probably not Xing out, of course, but not really focusing on either. You don't have any priority plays here, mostly just peripheral guys. Huh?
Ryan Braun.
Oh, Ryan Braun. Okay. Other than that, yeah. Yeah, you're a sucker for Ryan Braun against lefties. He is really, really cheap, though. So no argument there. There was a time where Ryan Braun was one of, if not the best lefty hitter in the league. So
he has a 380 WOBA this year and like a 482 expected WOBA. So I still think he's up there.
Yeah. No, he's still very good. I mean, he's not on the juice anymore, so that kind of hurts. But
no, like historically, he's got some of the best numbers like ever against lefties.
He has a 330. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He has a 334 expected ISO against them and a 264 actual ISO, which is a monster number. Yep. So yeah, really good stuff. Against lefties or against same-handed pitchers, though, he's been below average this year, below league average. So totally different hitter with the platoon advantage. All right, let's talk Coors Field here, Adam. I did end up playing a little bit of John Gray yesterday. I think I had 3 of 10, and you grin and bear it. Just hope it doesn't kill you. And John Gray, the Phillies are an absolute. They are a remedy for any struggle, any struggling pitcher. Like they are the medicine. They are the effing medicine, man. 7 one-run innings. He gave up a home run. Outside of that, struck out 7, 28 fantasy points. Like huge bounce back. And can I just say, I know this isn't a John Gray slate, but can I just say once again, like he is impossible to evaluate. I've just come to that conclusion. We've done. I remember I was down at the beach earlier this year, and I was out. We're talking about it because he got demoted or he sent to AAA. And I remember we're looking at different articles, different stats. There's really nothing you can come up with outside of he doesn't get enough ground ball, double play balls, like few things. But there's nothing to suggest that he should have been as bad as he was at times this season. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's been a really frustrating year with him. Kind of like no matter what side you're on to.
Yeah, 100%. That's the problem. And when he's going bad, he can turn it around at any time. When he's going great, he can turn it back around at any time. But that was yesterday. This is today. And we've got ourselves Chad Bettis. I was hoping, for some Tyler Anderson, but it's Bettis making a spot start here. And then Vince Velasquez, who, really is just really, really struggled over the past couple of months. It's been a rough go for Vince Velasquez. Allows a lot more home runs at home, but also strikes a lot less batters out on the road. And I guess one thing with Velasquez is when you talk about pitch mix, Adam, he does have a few pitches that could potentially save him at Coors Field, but I still simply don't see. I don't see any way he's going to escape this one with a pulse. He still throws a slider 16, 17% of the time. Maybe he can just go four-seam curveball, he throws a curveball 15% of the time. He throws a slider once in a while, but it's not his best pitch at all. This should be a problem start for Velasquez.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any confidence in him getting things right here going into the start. And Colorado's, running out the lineup that we expected that has, a bunch of good hitters in it, especially at the top. Blackman over a 400 WOBA against righties at home this year. David Dahl, for his career over a 400 WOBA, 260 ISO against righties at home. LeMahieu, not good against righties really, but still cheap and will put the ball in play here at Coors. So I like him in stacks. I don't really want to skip him. I don't love him as a one-off, but just not a spot where I expect Velasquez to really get things right. And Colorado is, pretty reasonably priced, relative to some other spots on the slate.
Yeah, certainly. Steven, it's got to be SJM, right? Steven JM. That's got to be. I'm assuming that's SJM. It's got to be.
I can probably tell you based on the comment.
Actually, being pretty reasonable. And so these guys want to know about Dylan Cousins. I know quite a bit about him, so I'll just quickly tell you. The dude has a lot of power. Broke records at the minor league level for home runs in a season. He hit 40 home runs in Double-A 2 years back. 40 home runs is ridiculous for any any minor league level, but he strikes out at an inordinate clip. Like, let me pull this up. At Double-A, he struck out, and this is the 40 home run year. He struck out 32% at Double-A. At Triple-A, he struck out 36%. And then that was last year. This year at Triple-A, 36% again. He's seen 26 plate appearances at the major league level this year, Adam. He has struck out. You know how many strikeouts in 26 plate appearances?
18.
16. He has a 62% K rate. It's like when Domingo Santana came up and struck out in his first 20 plate appearances. That's actually true, by the way. Might have been his first 18. But Cousins does have power. There's no question there's a lot of power. And Coors Field suppresses strikeouts. So that's true as well. Coors Field does suppress strikeouts. And Chad Bettis isn't exactly a killer. But, if you're playing Cousins, you're getting a home run or you're getting 4 strikeouts. It's really that simple. I don't see it being anything different. Chad Bettis against left-handed hitters is throwing 41% fastball, 15% slider, 11% curve. The changeup is his go-to, 33%. So we'll see. Cousins is better against anything that isn't breaking, and it makes obvious sense. But there's your Cousins breakdown. Yeah, there you go. And yes, it's pronounced Cousins.
Yeah, no, actually, when I saw he was in the lineup, I got really excited until I saw that they had actually priced him appropriately, at least on DraftKings at 4,900.
Yeah, I mean, look, he has plenty of power, but 4,900 is, for me, it's a complete no-go. Like, the most you're getting from him, and I'm sure he's going to hit 2 home runs today because I'm saying this, but like this type of guy with the strikeout problems that he has, your upside is one home run. And again, anything can happen. It's fucking baseball. But you know what I'm saying. It's very rare that you're getting a 2 home run game. And at 49, or even a 2 hit game for that matter. So at 4,900, at basically the same price as David Dahl and Blackman, I don't see any way I can do it on DraftKings. No, I can't.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like it would be in stacks, but that's it.
Well, yeah, and even then, I'd feel a little bit sketchy about it. Anyway, let's talk about this game. I spoke long enough. What do you got? Hit me with Philly side first, then we'll go to Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, you already talked about Colorado, but I think that Philly's fine. Like I just can't prioritize any of them. Chad Bettis isn't good, but he's not awful. The Rockies bullpen isn't awful. The thing for me is really just how many good hitting spots there are on this slate, and I have trouble bringing myself to pay for these Philly bats. So, yeah, I mean, Hoskins I think would be my favorite play because Bettis has been reverse splits throughout his career. So Hoskins, Wilson Ramos would be the two guys I like the most. But I'm much more interested in the Rockies bats than the Phillies bats, as are probably most people.
Let me ask you, when we talk Rockies, just to close out this game, uh, in terms of stack priority, where do you have them?
I'm not stacking a ton on this slate, but they are the one team or one of the two teams that I have stacked.
All right. Chad Bettis, by the way, let's see. He was the one that had testicular cancer,
Yep.
right? So he missed a bit of last year, I think.
Yeah, I think it was most of last year.
Yeah. So just dating back to the start of this season, he's got a 220x ISO against righties, a 367 expected WOBA, single digit swinging strike rate. Yeah, it's Chad Bettis. You know, you have a pretty good idea of what you're going to get from him. And I'll be honest though, like I'm a Philadelphia area guy, and this team is just, it seems like they've completely given up. When John Gray can bounce back, you know it's a problem. But yeah, obviously it's Coors Field, and some of these guys they're in good spots. So I do have interest, but for me, I just significantly prefer the Rockies here. And I mentioned this to you yesterday that at the first sign of danger, Eflin's going to get pulled, right? And Eflin got pulled after oh no, you know what? He got hurt. I think Eflin got hurt. I think he got pulled because he was hurt. So I'll take that back. Yeah. But either way, Kapler's pulling guys at the first sign of a scare, and that bullpen isn't going to scare anyone because they're not going to bring in their good relievers anyway. So Arizona and the Dodgers, Walker Buehler, we talked about him a lot at the top of the show. We love this guy. He's spectacular. He's facing Arizona. Oh, and Matt Cook is back on the mound. Matt Cook. The thorn in the – you remember that earlier this year?
Yeah.
Where he would just give up warning track shots every single time and they wouldn't leave the park. What an adventure he's been.
Yeah, I mean, he came in and shut down my stack like a week ago. I'm so tired of this guy.
Yep. Talk to me about this game.
So early in the day, I thought that I love Dodger stacks on FanDuel. Their price tags there make sense. And early in the day, I thought that stacking the Dodgers on DraftKings was just insane at their price tags. But as we've lost mid-range pitchers in Price and possibly in Toussaint, I'm coming around on getting some full Dodger stacks in here just because I think Cook is one of the worst pitchers in baseball. The roof is open tonight in Chase Field, and the price tag on the Dodgers should keep people away. So I have kind of come around on them. As far as one-offs, Grandal, I really like at catcher. And then it's kind of tough to prioritize anyone because Machado is more expensive than Story. Peterson's the same prices, or basically the same price as Mike Trout, as is Yasiel Puig. Like Bellinger's more expensive than Ohtani. It's tough to get there as far as optimal plays go on DraftKings where they're really expensive. But where if you are going with two, punt starting pitcher lineups, I think that they actually do make sense. They have a ton of upside.
Yeah, I think so too. But Walker Buehler for me just always seems to be the guy that goes overlooked on these slates where there's so many good pitchers, right? And when that's the case, I'm going to have some of them. Just like last week, it was Carrasco. This week or today, it's going to be Max Scherzer, and rightfully so. I understand that entirely. But the thing about Buehler is he is legitimately good enough. When I'm getting right now, ownership has been adjusted to 46 Scherzer, 9% Buehler. I mean, it's outrageous. It's just huge. So I love this guy. I will have some Walker Buehler. I do think he is that good. As I mentioned, his whiff per swing rate on his fastball is literally up there with Jacob deGrom, who's got the best or one of the best in the league every single year. And his curveball is nasty. This guy's just really, really good. So that's that. Anything else on this game?
No, I mean, I agree with you.
All right, Texas, we got 2 to go, and then we'll turn it over to the live before lock show. Texas, LA, Matt Shoemaker, Yovani Gallardo. We had a question in chat. Let me find it. It said, any analysis on the Angels versus Gallardo for a late night hammer? Jordan Ragoza, here we go, baby. We go game by game. We were getting there, and we got there now. So let's hear it.
Yeah, I like the Angels bats here. I think that Jose Fernandez is 3,100 on DraftKings. He's someone I kind of mentioned earlier. I think he is a good cash play because he opens up a lot of stuff for you where you can get Scherzer in, then you can still get some of these other really, really good bats. I don't really love him in tournaments outside of stacks just because he's not a big time power guy. He's in a park that doesn't play well for power. And it is a position where there's obviously a ton of opportunity cost in terms of power upside in tournaments. So he's someone that I think it really makes a difference as far as what format you're playing. To not quite the same extent, Cole Calhoun at 3,400. I think the price tag's too cheap for him, but it is worth noting that he has really come back to earth since that month or so after his demotion to the minor leagues. I still think he's a little too cheap for what he gives you against Gallardo. I'm fine with him in any format, but I think just maybe a little bit more of a cash play for me. But where I really get interested is Mike Trout, obviously, is the best hitter in baseball. He's in a good matchup against Gallardo, who's allowed a 4.13 WOBA to right-handed hitters this year. He's allowed 1.7 home runs per 9. And because of how many outfielders there are on this slate, it's going to be hard to imagine that Trout's going to be high enough owned that I don't want a lot of him. So I really, really like him. And then Ohtani, I imagine, will go pretty overlooked because he's in that same price range with guys like, David Dahl, Nelson Cruz. And then you have, Trout, you have Blackmon, you have just such a deep outfield position that I think he probably was a bit overlooked, which makes me love him as a one-off. So I do really, really like those guys here against Gallardo.
Shit, if Trout goes overlooked, you'd be silly not to get him into some lineups. Gallardo against righties is putrid. I mean, just flat out terrible. Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't even just say Trout. I think this Angels team as a stack makes sense. But first of all, Trout I don't think will be that low owned. But if in the event that he is, I would
think he's lower than like Blackmon and probably like either Dahl or something.
Yeah, right now it's showing pretty similar, 3% difference. But we'll see how that shapes up. Yeah, right now it has Dahl way below Trout, but I don't know if that'll be the case. I don't think so personally. Anything else here? We actually have 2 more games, so I want to hurry up a bit.
I mentioned Shoemaker in the article today. I think that if he's allowed to go deep, he has upside here. He's someone I like playing at home. I think that there's strikeouts on this Texas team. But the thing that concerns me is Shoemaker hasn't thrown more than 80 pitches in a start since coming back from the disabled list. And I know he's been getting pulled because he just hasn't been pitching that well. But has such an extensive injury history. They're not playing for anything that I don't feel super confident in his pitch count, in him getting to 95 or 100 pitches. And with all these bats, I'm just finding myself going cheaper at pitcher.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I don't see the need to go to Shoemaker here. We've already talked about a lot of cheap guys. Llama Trader says, is the maker of shoes brand name or pay? Yeah, maker of shoes was the name we gave him a while ago. I'm not even answering that question because it's just a joke, but nice work, man. He's remembering the old school names from back in the day. Oakland and Seattle. James Paxton, by the way, good thing we didn't go there. Mike Leake, Brett Anderson, Battle of the Juggernauts. What do you got?
I have nothing from this game except for Nelson Cruz and Mike Zunino one-offs.
Yeah, it's just not a good one. I don't see any pitching that's worth going to either. If Mike Leake was down there with the Cole Stewarts and stuff, I would consider him, but he isn't, so there's really no need. Last one here. San Diego, San Francisco, Chris Stratton, Robbie Erlin. Robbie Erlin was pretty chalky last time he faced this team, which was 6 days ago. And he was, Robbie Erlin-esque. He did nothing well. He gave up 3 runs, struck out 3 across 5, and got the win, fortunately. Otherwise, it would have been a colossal disaster. Chris Stratton, on the other hand, tosses a complete game shutout against Colorado and then gets blasted by the Padres. So this is the world we live in now, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, Erlin, I think, is the top SP2 play in cash games. I think that the price tag's still cheap enough. This is a guy that struck out about 18% of righties this year, but he's only walked 2%. He's allowed a 298 WOBA. He's pitching in a great park. He's pitching against a terrible team. I think that he's like the best point per dollar SP2 play to pair with Scherzer in cash. I don't mind going to him in tournaments either if you're contrarian elsewhere. It's just that when you're talking about a guy who I expect will probably be around 30-something% owned, he doesn't have the raw point upside that really scares me if I don't have him in my lineup. So if I am playing, chalkier teams, like if I'm stacking Colorado, for example, then I don't, unless I'm doing something else that's, kind of unique, I don't really like going there, or I don't really like just pairing him with Scherzer in tournaments and playing a bunch of, different cheaper stacks. I want to do something that's contrarian if I am playing Erlin in tournaments.
I mean, really, what is Erlin's ceiling?
23.
Right. Yeah. And the probability that he gets there, even in a good matchup, isn't particularly great.
Yeah, he most likely get like 16 to 18 points here.
Exactly. Stratton's going to be pretty popular too, though.
Yeah, I just can't find myself getting to that price range, really. Stratton, it's a good matchup for him, but he's just not that good of a pitcher. I wouldn't talk anyone off of him. It's just that in most of my lineups, I find myself preferring if I save like $2,500 and go to a 4K guy.
I will say though, personally, I would rather go Stratton over Erlin, just because I think they're close enough in price, and Stratton has at least proved that. Not like I'm talking about in tournaments here.
Yeah.
Because Stratton has at least proved that when he's on, he's really on. When he's off, it doesn't even matter because you're playing him in tournaments, right? Like, he goes negative in 3 straight starts, then 31, then 11 and 11, then 41, then negative. Like, when Stratton's on, he can be very, very good. He does have a legitimately high ceiling when he's pitching well. So I think if I were to go to one of the guys in tournaments, it would be Stratton, because I know that when he does have a good game, it's a very good game.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, pitchers. Let's hit our positions, then we'll hand this over to Live Before Lock, and they'll bring you up till 7:05. Give me your top pitchers here.
Scherzer, Erlin, Stewart.
Yeah, Scherzer. I love the Bueller pivot if you wanted to get different here. And then, Erlin, Stratton, and Stewart. Oh, this would be fun. Catcher.
Grandal, Nick Hundley. I forgot to mention I like him as a leverage play off of Erlin, and Mike Zunino.
All right. Yeah. Love Grandal here. I got to throw Ionetta in there just because he's facing the Phillies at Coors. And I don't hate Matt Wieters. He always actually does me solid. That's probably it. Francisco Cervelli's not terrible. We did get that home run against Hamels from him, by the way, yesterday. So it's doable. It's doable. First base.
Encarnacion, Jose Fernandez, if you need a cheapie, and Anthony Rizzo.
Yeah. Encarnacion, Alonso's fine. Fernandez is batting. Well, at least we expect him to bat higher up in the order, 3,100. And Anthony Rizzo at 4,400 is a very solid price point. Second base, I still like Jose Ramirez, even though he struggled. Caesar's just too expensive up there. I don't think Daniel Murphy's a bad play, though. He's 4,100. And I like Jose Altuve against Gaviglio, too.
Yeah, I like Murphy, Jose Ramirez, if you can get to him, and DJ LeMahieu.
All right, third base.
Anthony Rendon, Josh Donaldson, Nolan Arenado.
All right, give me shortstop. I'm trying to hurry up here.
Marwin Gonzalez, Francisco Lindor, and Machado.
All right, I'll throw Bregman into the mix as well.
Yeah, actually, I'll say Story over Lindor.
All right, still under 5K. And outfield.
Ryan Braun, Calhoun's cheap, Trout, Ohtani, Nelson Cruz, Blackmon, Dahl, Bellinger, Puig, anyone on the Dodgers you can get to. It's stacked.
All right, that'll do it. Stick around. Live Before Lock coming up next. Going to take you up to 7:05. Thanks as always for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow for the last week of Major League Baseball coverage on awesemo.com.